Welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to talk about flute washers. I'm going to try to do this in one take. I'll try not to ramble. But flute washers are necessary for holding the pad in place. But there's a lot going on here. We have to consider several things. We have to consider the type of pad we're using. We have to consider the style of pad installation necessary for that pad, and we have to consider the geometry that we're dealing with. A couple of different geometries actually, but I'll get to that. This is a Sankyo flute that I'm installing Strawbinger pads in for the first time. Strawbinger pads and other engineered pads, if you were to look at the horizon of the pad, you should see the washer. Probably won't get the angle just right here, but you should see the washer sitting on top of the pad. If it is sucked down into the surface of the pad, that's a recipe for instability, and that is bad news. So the way we get around that getting sucked down, this is our first geometry concern, is dealing with the height of the, excuse my arm, this is just a generic pad I have in here for demonstration purposes, so I don't trash the real pad. Underneath the pad, we've got lots of stuff going on. Typically on most flutes now you're going to have a stabilizer of some sort. That gives you a flat surface to build off of, and there will be likely an assortment of shims to get that pad up to the proper pad clearance above the edge of the pad cup. That's generally where most flute padders reference the critical dimensions for padding. For Strawbinger pads, the horizon here, not the horizon, the plane, we'll go with plane, nice machining term. The plane of the rim of the pad cup will be parallel to the tone hole when the pad is sticking out 16 thousandths of an inch, 0.016 inches. That's how all of these are set up. This just being a generic pad doesn't really matter. But also in there we have our pad spud, what the screw goes into. Couple of ways of dealing with this. Either, well, the best way to deal with it is you tighten the screw down until the washer stops against the spud. Then you will have a positive contact of the screw mechanism and it will lock in place. Alternatively, and this is quite common, you use the tension of the pad material to provide pushback against the thread to hold it in place. That relies on the fickleness of felt. So I don't like to do that. I want a positive contact against this hard surface. So when you have a pad washer that's flat like this, and it's sucking down the pad in the middle, you have to create space in there. One way of doing that is with a washer that has a dimple on it. These are just generic brand name washers that I can get by the dozen. They do the job. Occasionally you can get silver ones. My previous supplier of Silver Ones is no longer doing them, so I'm going to look into making them myself. And then the next step beyond that, these are made by J.L. Smith, stainless steel, and they have a, let's make sure I'm in the frame here, they have a machined surface here, so it is very precise. Stainless steel, very nice. And he also has a Delrin version. These are challenging to work with, but I have found need for them on occasion. Probably won't be able to see it on camera unless the light is reflecting just right, but this also has the same step as this, only a different material. So what that does is that hurries up the contact point, basically, here. But this is the original washer, original screw. That profile provides something to how the flute plays. And if you go and put the screw in one of these recessed washers, a washer with a dimple in it, all of a sudden the head of the screw is below the surface. It's not sticking up like this. That will provide a difference. Better or worse, who knows? Your mileage may vary. So in the quest of keeping things original, I want to use these original washers. This is not the original washer, I've already doctored it up, but I'm going to show you the quick way to do this. The slow way to do this, which a lot of people do, and I do also when I need to, is to unsolder the spud and solder in one that's taller, thereby taking up that space. To do that on all of the closed holes that would be necessary for this is a lot of extra work, and the Sankyo spuds honestly are better than the ones that I can get. They're more consistent. Not more consistent than the spuds, but how they're centered, how they're aligned. I have to work extra hard to make sure mine are installed as well, and that doesn't translate to a quick job. So, spacer washers. You take, imagine this was the washer in question that you're going to use. Oh, first let me show you. Excuse my arm again. If I were to tighten this all the way down, you can see how much distortion there is on that pad. How much this is sucked down. From the profile view, the top of that screw head is barely poking over the top of the pad. So this is why we need extra space in there. So I have here just a scratch awl, AWL for those from the south. It's just real good for holding the washer in place. Now I take my steel washer, let me make sure this is in the frame. So I have my washer on the point of the awl. I take my steel washer, plunk it on like that. And then I just take a little bit of Loctite super glue and just dot it, oops, at the edge. Let capillary action do the work. Clean up the excess as best you can. And there is the washer with a riser built in. Now make sure the glue is dry before you stick it on, install it, because you don't want to glue the washer to the pad. That is a different technique we will talk about another time. Seriously. So this one still has the annoying paper washer. And don't use paper washers, paper leaks. That's good enough for demonstration purposes. So now my washer with a spacer on it. Excuse my hand for a final time. Now it's a little bit sucked in, but I can deal with that. It's a lot better, but that's what we can use Mylar washers. These are 5 thousandths thick, I think. J.L. Smith makes orange ones that are 4 thousandths thick, and you can also get ones that are 7.5 thousandths thick. So I would just take this off, and the hole is such that it will thread right onto the screw pretty well and stay in place. So that's a bonus for these. But that's what these steel washers are for. It's very fast, very consistent. If you don't need to go this far, you can just use the plastic ones, but you get to the point of using 3, 4, 5 of the thick plastic ones stacked up. Might as well use this, so it'll be a lot more stable. And the super glue will do fine holding it in place. Any questions, put them in the comments, and I will try to answer them as I can. Otherwise, see you next time.